now that we have just a moment to calm ourselves, to sort of center the mind. Let's, for those who were here last time, if you remember, we had a little bit of a homework. We had talked about taking one conversation, right? One conversation daily to practice our listening. Yeah, conscious listening. So I'm wondering if anyone who was here last week and had a chance to practice that, if they would be willing to just share briefly how that went.
Hey, I'm I'm new, but I was just wondering if I could get kind of a breakdown on what I've missed. Like, I'm not asking for a big long thing, just something quick, kind of catch up with everybody.
Hi. Um, I believe the talk was recorded, wasn't it, Chella? Yes. So the talk was recorded. So you can just listen to it from beginning to end, and that way you'll be caught up. What I can mention is that we talked about speech and why the Buddha thought it was important, how the Buddha recommended we should use our speech, and we talked about it, making sure that our words are truthful, beneficial, timely, and kind. And we talked about the negativities of speech and avoiding those so that we can avoid harming others and harming ourselves. So that's kind of the general, a very brief overview of what we went over. We had some breakout groups to talk about some a related topic. And we are going to continue today deepening our look at communications and how we communicate with each other and how we can improve that for our own benefit and the benefit of all around us. Okay. So now to my original question, if anyone who was here last time feels like they are wanting to share very briefly how that homework went, if you were able to do it, how it changed your experience. Perhaps it didn't, but how you felt while you were doing that. If you've, yeah, anyone wants to share? Okay, we have some shy folks today. That's totally fine. No one wants to
I'll share.
communicate in a
I'll
communication.
share.
Nobody. Okay. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you.
Um, I found myself at the beginning that when I was having conversations with people, I was thinking more about what I was going to say to them or my response, and then going through this whole thing instead of actually like sitting there and really fully hearing what they were saying, because I was like then thinking about the next thing that, I was thinking about, or I was butting in and then giving my opinion, on whatever they're like, and they weren't really. So I was really trying to, after that, just really trying to fully try to listen to them. But again, I was still having problems and doing the same thing.
Yes. These habits we're going to find that are very hard to break. We've sort of habituated ourselves for a long time to communicate in certain ways, and it's very difficult to try and change course. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how we start to do that slowly until we can make that turn. We can, gain some traction with our new skills. And so thank you, Kathleen, for sharing. I appreciate that. So maybe next week folks will come
That
with a
that
little
was
bit.
that was Stacy that shared, I
Stacy.
believe.
Stacy. Oh, I'm sorry. Stacy, thank you. I was confused with Kathleen because she has her hand up. Kathleen, are you wanting to share? please share briefly what you're. Thank you, Stacy. I'm sorry for the confusion. I was looking at this little hand and completely thinking I was speaking with Kathleen. My apologies.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated this, having this homework to do. And what it felt for me was, the first couple days, I was able to control my speech and also the written word, I think because the class was still kind of fresh in my mind. And then later in the week, it got harder, and I realized my downfall is work, talking to other people about other people at work. And that came up a couple times at the end of the week, and it was difficult for me.
Well, but very nice that you were able to notice that. Yes, and get some kind of a aha moment in terms of what that is and how, how that was impacting you. So thank you for the sharing. And then I'm hoping that there's going to be a homework this week. And so maybe some folks you can next week get a little bit of a desire to share. And there is no bad experience. I think we don't have to be shy about thinking, oops, I'm going to say something embarrassing, or this is a bad thing, or whatever. This is not a bad, there isn't anything such as a bad experience. We're all learning, and we're all trying to change our communication styles to something that's more suitable for our spiritual development and for creating harmony in the different spaces that we share with others. And so we are going to just talk a little bit about reactivity, because communication is a source of reactivity whenever we are interacting with others. So it's very likely that we are going to encounter either some difficult topics or some difficult emotions coming up. Yeah. So when these emotions come up, they tend to just overtake our connection, overtake our communication. Our emotions just arise and they overwhelm. When these emotions arise and overwhelm, I'm sure we've all had this experience. The first thing we do is we stop listening. We stop listening to the person that we're interacting with, and we start listening to our emotions. So our emotions sort of like hijack our interaction. They become the focus of the experience at that moment. I'm no longer focusing on the other person. I'm focusing on everything that's coming up for me. Me. Yes. And so that immediately is a barrier. And it creates not just a feeling of disconnect, right? But it can create some a need or an impulse to react, an impulse to say something. Yes. And then we begin to think about how I'm going to respond, right? I'm having this emotion, I'm having this strong reaction, and I want to say something, either to have the person stop or to sort of get back at them for what they said to us that was triggering or what have you. Yeah. And so when we get that emotional charge and we get completely disconnected from the other person and we connect more with our emotion, and then we have this feeling to this impulse to interrupt, to say something, to get back at them, yes, then everything can go wrong, right? So this happens to us. I would say it's very often, and then it happens to others. Sometimes people trigger us totally unbeknownst to them. And sometimes we trigger other people totally unbeknownst to them. Yeah, to us. We just don't know. Okay, Cody, was it Cody that was raising the hand? Cody, were you wanting to
Yeah, I
say?
just had a question.
Yes.
You mentioned something about whenever you're having a conversation, people triggering you.
Yes.
Whenever that happens, how do you get past that? Because I
Okay, so
feel
that's
like sometimes when I'm having conversations, my don't know how to say this without sounding arrogant. I maybe they don't understand me because they have a lower IQ,
okay.
and that irritates me, makes me
Okay.
mad, makes me not want to carry on with the conversation.
Totally. So let's talk about that because that's exactly where we're headed. That's where we're headed. Okay. So people trigger and push our buttons without necessarily knowing that they're doing that. Sometimes they do know and they do it on purpose, but a lot of the times they don't. Just like when we are speaking with other people, we may be triggering them and we may be pushing their buttons and we may not be aware of that. Okay. Because these triggers, these buttons that we all have, okay, are not necessarily known to the other person and they come from our own experience, from our own traumas in the past, from our own hurts, yeah, from our own likes and dislikes, yeah. And so people come completely ignorant of our background, completely ignorant of the things that we don't like, things that hurt us, our experiences that are painful that we haven't processed, that we've not processed. So all of that, all of those things are triggers. And they're, if we had not done any work on our triggers, they are very, very much on the surface. And all we need is a little spark for those triggers to blow up and hijack our connection. Okay. So in your case, you have this particular trigger that you mentioned, but it could be anything. It could be a noise that they do. I have a trigger that I just identified very recently, and it's a noise. It's noise that people make with their lips when they are speaking or eating or drinking. And it really unnerves me. And then I realized that when I was a child, someone that I had a troubled relationship with used to make that noise. And so when someone in my vicinity is making that noise, I am connecting that with that experience that was not very pleasant. And then all that's coming, and I'm reacting to the person. When in reality, that reaction is something that belongs to the past, but it's coming up now in front of this person. And so but now that I know, now that I have identified the reason why that's a trigger for me, then I can start working on it. And that's part of what we need to do is now you have identified, Cody, this trigger, and then you can start to work on that. We can start to analyze whether this is a valid reason for getting upset or not. Yes.
So do you think it's something that I should change, or do you think I should just start talking to smarter people, expanding
So,
my, who I talk to and who I have these conversations with?
so I think we all have the ability to choose what strategy is going to work best for us, you know? So certainly you can choose to change your friendships or your acquaintances, but the most effective way to work with our triggers is to simply work with them ourselves so that we can change our reaction. Yes, because if you're in this group and this group triggers you, and all you do is move to another group, there's no way to know whether that same trigger is going to manifest in another group. Yeah, because you really have not dealt with it. You've simply moved away to a situation where you may not be triggered. Yes, but you haven't dealt with your trigger. You haven't dealt with the root of the issue, which lies in yourself, in your mind. It doesn't lie with the other person's IQ or anything that they have or don't have. It just lies within your mind. And in order to effectively and effectively deal with that from the root, you have to work with yourself. You have to analyze whether this way of thinking and relating to others is actually beneficial or not for yourself and for others in a long term. Yes. So then the first step is to look at, okay, what are my triggers? To really observe our communication with others and to figure out what are my triggers. Because I can control my triggers. Once we know what they are, we can all control our triggers. We can all work on them to diminish their strength, to diminish the frequency in which they basically sabotage our communication. But only we can do that. Yes, only we can do that. So we have to be quite open and honest with ourselves and figure out, okay, what is it? What is the button that keeps on being pushed by other people that I have within my mind? And then once we identify it, then we can start to unpack it, analyze it, understand it, until eventually, it won't bother us anymore. Yeah, it won't bother us anymore. It is work, and it takes a while. It takes time, but we can do it. There is every possibility for us to first of all identify them, and second, reduce their strength in our mind so that they don't come up as often and sabotage our interaction with others. Yeah. So somebody else had their hand up, and I don't know.
It was
I don't remember
Abby
the name.
Patrick.
Abby, yes, Abby had their hand up. Abby,
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of tag on to what Cody said, kind of like clarifying and understanding. I know that he says he kind of gets triggered when he's talking to people who have like a lower IQ, and I'm kind of curious to see, like, does that mean where you're not getting that mental stimulation you're looking for when you're having those interactions with people, or is like what is the trigger?
It's not necessarily mental stimulation. It's more of I leave the conversation feeling like I haven't had a conversation. Like they don't understand what I said.
Okay.
And maybe it's the vocabulary I use, the way I talk. I'm not sure. But it's infuriating. I mean, it happens a lot, and I may be overreacting, but that's just, that's my thought on it.
Okay.
so there may so the problem with the situation is not necessarily whether the person has or doesn't have an IQ. I mean, unless we actually sit down to measure their IQ, we're not going to know exactly what their IQ is or isn't. But the problem or whatever is hampering you is your own response to that. You get frustrated, you get angry, you sort of interpret the situation as this person is not understanding what I'm saying. And then that is what's bothering you.
Yeah, I'm starting to kind of think maybe I have anger issues.
So that's sort of what we're working with, is that response. Because we cannot really do anything about the other person. We cannot do anything about their communication style. We cannot do anything about whether they understand or don't understand what we're saying. There's nothing we can do about that. The only thing we have any control over, the only thing that we can actually try and address, is our response to whatever we're encountering and whatever we're perceiving. And realize that sometimes, actually most of the time, what we think we are perceiving, yeah, is a fantasy in our mind. Yeah. It's simply something that may or may not be accurate. We are interpreting the situation in a way that may not be accurate and probably is not accurate. we're kind of feeding ourselves a fantasy about what happened or didn't happen in this communication, and then we react to it. Yeah, we react to that projection. We react to that idea. Yeah. And so then we need to question that. First of all, am I interpreting this situation correctly? What else could be the source of this miscommunication we're having? Yes, maybe I'm pushing the other person's buttons as well. Yes, maybe they are perceiving me in a way that prevents them from actually communicating with me better. Yes, so there could be other explanations to what's going on, and we need to explore those and not just get sort of blocked or boxed into a single interpretation of what could be going on.
So you think maybe
So
I could be coming off like condescending, maybe?
so I don't know. I've never observed you communicating with someone, so I don't know. The work of observation comes to you. You observe yourself, and then you figure out what are some possible explanations that could sort of help you understand what's going on, and then deal with your response to it. Yeah. Okay, so if you find some explanations that work, some sort of other ways of looking at the situation, then you can start working from those different points of view, and you have a broader understanding of what's really going on. Yes, because when we find ourselves in situations of miscommunications with others, it's seldom a one person issue. Yes, we're communicating with somebody, so therefore the issues are from both sides. Yeah, we cannot just say, oh, it's the other person's fault. It's the other person's fault. Yeah, it's coming from both sides. And the way to resolve our part of it is figuring out what's going on with me. The person is responsible for what's going on with them, but we are responsible for what's going on with me. Yes. And so what happens is, if we look at just, there's another hand up. Okay, just let's take one more, because I really need to explain this, otherwise we're not gonna get through the topic tonight. So Aditya, if you could.
But then I guess I think you can explain. I just wanted to add one more point to what to Cody's situation or experience. So
Yes,
it will
yes,
can I add?
sure, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah. So Cody. So recently, I attended some philosophical discussions, and I understand your situation, because I was not in the same situation, but I am in a similar situation. So one thing is that whenever I feel that like this is not working out for me, the primary uh, problem that I found was how I am understanding, or how my personal goal or my personal win is uh, is like how I'm understanding my personal win in that situation. So basic idea is that win-win situation, right? We strive to create win-win situation. So if interacting with someone is not making you feel that you are winning, then we can rephrase the win definition. What does success mean to us in that situation? And that way we can strive harder, and we can have the adequate amount of patience to go through that situation. So in your case, from what I understand, let's say if you if people get triggered when they are talking to someone who doesn't have enough knowledge or not enough comprehensive abilities, then the win for you, or the motivation for you to push through that situation, would be to challenge yourself against the problem, that how I can explain whatever that I'm trying to explain to a person who has an IQ of, let's say, 10-year-old, or who has an IQ of, let's say, 5-year-old. So there are things there's a very famous a trend of like explain like I am fine. So
I did, yes, sorry to interrupt you.
yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying. And I'm wondering if then you and Cody can talk offline, because
Yes,
if
yes.
if this goes all over, I can't really
Yes,
focus
yes.
on what I'm
Apologies. Yeah,
saying.
I
So
understand.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
so
I appreciate everybody
so
doing that, but I don't want to be the subject of the class. You know, I feel like I'm being
so,
targeted here, and I'm
so
sorry. I didn't mean to take over the class.
okay.
It's kind of, yeah.
Thank you. No,
I think
there's
I'm
no.
just, I think I'm just gonna leave. It's feel like everybody's attacking me, and
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Okay, no problem. Just breathe through it. I don't think anybody's attacking you. People are trying to help you, give you some ideas. So just breathe and let that emotion go. Okay. So this is how we get hijacked by emotions. Yes, in the communication, we get hijacked by emotions, and then things go awry. Yes, because yeah, we we interpret things in one way, but not how they're happening. Yes, that's not what was happening, but that's how the mind interprets. So I'm being attacked by somebody, or things like that. So it's a perfect example for this class. Yes, there was no communication because there was a surge of emotion and the communication was lost. Okay. And it happens to us on a daily basis in other in a lot of different contexts. Okay. So let's go back to where we were. We have to recognize, acknowledge, observe what are the triggering points. What are the triggers that make all these emotions come up when we're trying to communicate? And the interesting thing is, something that we need to realize is that those who we are closest to, our close friends, and all of our relatives, everybody, most everybody around us knows what our triggers are. Okay. Our closest relatives, our parents, our brothers, those that we share with, those folks, they may not know him very clearly, right? But they have enough experience with us to kind of have a very automatic knowledge of which buttons to push. They may not do it consciously. It may not be a conscious thing, but yes, if you observe, if you notice, some of the folks that are close to you are the ones who can push your buttons more often. And same thing we do. The folks that we are closest to, we unconsciously know their buttons and we push them too. Yes. So we get stuck in communication patterns with those people that are closest to us, where they push our buttons and we push their buttons, and we don't get anywhere in our communications. And there we go round and round and round and round. And what we don't notice, yeah, and one thing that we don't notice when we're triggered, is that there is usually a space between the trigger event and our response. But right now, when our mind is not very trained, that space is very small. Right? Boop. Somebody said something, boop, we exploded. Yeah? We just saw it with Cody. Response space, very small, immediately. Emotion came up, I can't take it, oh, I gotta go. It happens to us many times. So with practice, however, with observing, with knowing our triggers, we can build a longer space between the triggering event or the triggering words and our response. Yeah. And the longer that space is, the better off we're going to be. So when we are interacting, we need to be aware Okay, where are the spaces? And if I'm feeling triggered, okay, I need to build a space between that triggering event and my response so that that response, can be delayed. Because if that space, if I manage to increase that space as much as possible, then my response can be delayed long enough for me to work on that emotion before I explode and say or do something that I'm going to regret. Yes. So that space between the trigger and the response, we can learn to manage to our advantage. Yes. To secure a response that is wiser, kinder for ourselves and for the person that we are interacting with. Yeah. So again, so the first step, I want to repeat it so that we get those steps kind of honing in our mind. We get them right there. First step, we have to identify our triggers. Yes, we have to identify what are our buttons. And then we have to sort of work to understand it. Where are they coming from? Why does it become a problem for me? Yeah. And then how can I lessen? How can I reduce the strength of this trigger, of this? How can I work with myself, with my understanding of my mind to lessen the strength of this trigger? So that's first. Then, okay, now that I've identified this trigger, then how do I then identify that space between the trigger and my response so that I can lengthen that space? And when I lengthen that space, I can delay my response so that I can try to manage my emotion before it comes out and creates a mess. And we can develop strategies ahead of time. Once we start working with that space, we can say, okay, I am going to build a space by breathing. I'm going to breathe deeply and try to make that space before I explode. Yeah, I'm going to build a space by breathing deeply. Or simply by conditioning myself to say, you know what? I'm getting triggered. We can just say that to the person. I am getting triggered. Is it okay for me to step away? I need to step away before I say something that is going to be, that I'm going to regret. So that could be one strategy. Another strategy could be, okay, I'm getting triggered. I'm going to recite mantras. I'm going to recite Om Mani Padme Hum. Or I'm going to visualize Buddhas right here. And I'm going to focus on my visualization of Buddhas until I feel that I have enough space so that I can have a wise reaction. Yeah, so I can control this emotion, lessen it, manage it, and it just doesn't come out in some kind of a messy way. Right? So ahead of time, before we get into a problematic conversation, a problematic situation, we need to have very clear in our mind what is going to be our response to a triggering event. And we need to take advantage of that space between the trigger and the response to avoid or delay the response. Yes. So we need to sit down, when we're sitting down to analyze and identify and analyze our trigger, when we're sitting down to sort of try to understand where this trigger comes from, what it means to us, how can I manage it? How can I lessen it? When we're trying to do that, we can also spend some time thinking about, okay, if I'm triggered, how am I going to manage that space before my response so that I can lengthen it and I can manage my response, delay my response and manage it wisely. Okay, so am I going to breathe? Am I going to just say, listen, I gotta step away for a moment. I need some time. And then you step away. Or I can am I going to recite a mantra mentally while I'm trying to work with this emotion that's coming up? I'm going to recite a mantra or I'm going to visualize Buddha. So we have it all prepared ahead of time. Yes, we are preparing ourselves. If we walk into a situation unprepared, then we are more likely to find some trouble. But if we're prepared, and then things may go better. Okay. So another thing to take into account is that when these strong emotions come up, yes, one thing that we can say to ourselves also is, this is going to pass. This emotion is surging now with strength, with force, with immediacy in my mind. But it's going to change moment by moment by moment. And if I work with it well, its force will be reduced. It doesn't have to stay full strength, and it won't stay full strength because the nature of that emotion is that it changes from moment to moment. Even though right then and there, it feels overwhelming. It feels like this huge thing that we are not going to be able to manage. But if we give it time, if we observe it, if we breathe, if we observe it, if we just give it time, delay a response, that emotion will calm down. Yes. And we have to be very convinced of that, so that in managing our time, in managing that space between trigger and response, we can do it with great assurance that this is a strategy that works. Okay. Of course, we need to practice it. We need to put it in practice. And the first times that we attempt to do this, it's going to be hard. Yeah, we're going to be falling in our face the first few times, and we're going to say, oh, yes, I did the same thing. But if we keep up with it, eventually we'll reach some level of success. And so our level of success depends on how long we stick with it. The longer we stick with it, the probability of success is higher. And so this emotions that we experience as strong and explosive and unchanging, when we start thinking that way, we need to stop and say, no, that's not true. Okay. They are explosive only because I haven't worked on it. And they seem unchanging only because I haven't noticed that they change moment by moment by moment. But that's their nature. So we're not going to be stuck with them for a long time. So if we slow down the interaction and use a strategy, a delay strategy to delay a response, we have higher chance of managing it wisely. And the more that we counter, the more that we train our mind to counter the strong emotions with antidotes, yes, the better, the lesser the strength of the emotion. Because we are building our mental muscle. Yeah. We are building a response muscle. We are creating a new pathway to respond. In the beginning, that's hard. But the more that we thread that new pathway, the stronger it's going to be. And then the emotion is going to be a lot less explosive when it arises. So all this is built over time, but it can happen. Yes. So the more consistency we have in countering, in using a strategy to counter those triggers and to counter those emotions, the higher the opportunity for success. And when we are, and what are those antidotes? Okay, well, we can use these strategies for the moment, right? So the moment that we get into a triggering situation, we can use the strategies that I already mentioned. But in order to apply the antidotes, the real antidotes to the emotions that we are experiencing, we have to apply those antidotes in meditation. You see, the strategies help us to cope with the situation in the moment and to reduce the chances of us doing or saying something that we're going to regret. That's kind of the in the moment way to deal with it. But once we step away from that situation, yeah, we need to start applying an antidote to the emotions that are rising. So if anger is arising, quite often in our interactions, then we need to apply an antidote to anger. And the antidote to anger is loving kindness. Yes. So all those folks that make us angry, that keep on pushing our buttons all the time, those that we have very difficult interactions with, the antidote for that is to generate loving kindness towards those people. And so over time, as we generate loving kindness towards them, our interactions become less difficult, more pleasant, something that we can live with as a result of applying this antidote to the anger, loving kindness. Loving kindness direct toward those difficult people. We can also use compassion. Compassion. Because nobody likes to be a difficult person. Nobody enjoys being a difficult person, even though some people might try to tell you that that's really what I live for, to be difficult. And it may seem like they're having a great time being difficult, but nobody really internally derives any happiness from being a difficult person. So then that's sort of like a way for us to develop compassion towards them, because we know, despite what they say, they're not having fun being difficult. Yeah, they're suffering through it. It's just that in order for them to cope with their suffering, they have to make other people suffer. So we can have compassion based on that. And that, again, that compassion is going to make our interaction with them less difficult. But that work of generating the compassion, of generating the loving kindness, that takes place during our meditation. Yeah, we cannot do that while we're having a difficult interaction with the person. No, when we're having a difficult interaction with them, we put into place our strategies. We use our strategies that we identify beforehand, kind of manage the difficult situation. But once that is managed, then we go back to our meditation on loving kindness, compassion towards that person. Okay. And also during our meditation, we can rehearse our strategy. Yes. So if we know there's a person, we're always having a bad communication with them, we're always having a bad interaction with them, so we can meditate and we can create in our meditation a scenario where we're dealing with this person and then everything goes haywire. And then we immediately go into our strategy for coping with that, for increasing that space between trigger and response. We rehearse it during our meditation, and then we're more likely to do it when it's actually happening. Yeah. So those strategies become really cemented in our mind through the meditation, and we'll remember those strategies. And then we also meditate on loving kindness and compassion so that we can build a better relationship with that person from the inside out. Okay, so those are the steps. Those are the mechanisms, the method that we're going to be using to address these situations. So the best antidote for anger is patience. Yeah. Or fortitude. It's actually fortitude is more to me is the better term than patience. It's fortitude. Although a lot of people use the word patience, but fortitude really, for me, describes more closely what it is that we're trying to develop. So I don't know how many of you have read or are aware of this amazing text called The Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Yeah. Written by Shantideva. And it's a magnificent text. It's just amazing. He has a whole chapter dedicated to the development of fortitude, of patience. Yes. And in that book, in that whole chapter, one of the messages that Shantideva is getting across is that the enemy is not the person that is triggering us. The enemy is our anger. The enemy is our response to that trigger. That's the enemy. And that's what we need to focus on conquering. Yes. We need to conquer our response, our anger. Yes. And he has a number of ways that we can think about that can help us really work with this response that is not helpful. So one of them I find incredibly, I mean, they're all very insightful, but one that I find very helpful is the one that says, hey, yeah, why am I going to be unhappy about something if I can fix it? If it can be fixed, why am I going to be unhappy about it? Conversely, if it cannot be fixed, why am I going to be unhappy? If it can be fixed, then being unhappy makes no sense because there is a remedy for it. So being unhappy is useless. There is a remedy. Instead, let's use the energy to apply the remedy. But if it cannot be fixed, then being unhappy is not going to fix it. Being unhappy also has no logic because it's wasted energy. I'm being unhappy about something that I cannot do anything about. Let's throw away the unhappiness and move on to something I can actually change. So those are his wise words. And so if we're having a situation that is difficult and there's nothing we can do about it, let's not be unhappy. Let's try to find a way to do something else. But if it can be fixed, then we can fix it. Then we can work and invest our energy in fixing it instead of getting angry. And then another way to look at it is when we're having a difficult interaction with someone, that person is saying some words. The person is speaking some words. And our ears are hearing those words. And our mind is interpreting those words. So where does the fault lie? Because what triggers us is our interpretation of what we heard. Words are just sounds. Just sounds. Just sounds. But we are the ones who give meaning to the sounds. It's our mind that interprets, that gives meaning, and then reacts to it. Yeah. So then whose fault is it that we got hurt? Whose fault is it that we get triggered? One could argue that it's our own mind's fault because it was our own mind who interpreted, who gave meaning to the words. If somebody says something offensive to me, like you have a lower IQ, if I don't interpret that as offensive, I don't have to be offended by it. Now, if I interpret that as offensive, I'll be offended. But whose fault is that? My own interpretation. My own interpretation. So then we can train ourselves, yeah, to not interpret other people's words in a way that harms us. We can make that choice because what we're hearing is just a sound. It's just a sound. And I have the ability to interpret that sound any which way I want. So let's think about that. Let's really reflect about that. The interpretation is what makes us react. And we control our own interpretations. So that's one way to think about it. The other way to think about it is, hey, I am reacting in this way because of my own karma. In some other life, I created some negativity that has now resulted in this interaction that hurts me. So why should I react negatively to this person, explode, feel angry towards this person, when in reality, I am responsible for my experience. I created the cause for this experience. And so if we meditate in these ways of interpreting the situation, we will be creating a new perspective in our mind that will allow us to modify how we react. Yeah. But we have to sit down and meditate and do the work. Okay, so basically, I have used up my whole time for what was supposed to be the first 15 minutes of the talk. So I have failed in my goal to deliver all of the information that I wanted to deliver. But I'm going to do my best to go over in the next 10 minutes so that we have an exercise that I don't want to take too much time away from because I think it's important. So let's see how much more. And I, just like last time, I'm going to finish with the last part very quickly, just like I did last time. This is becoming habitual. I'm going to have to meditate on it. Okay. So another thing that gets us in trouble when we are communicating with other folks is that sometimes we confuse honesty, honest words, with cruel words. Yeah. We want to be honest, and I'm going to tell you the truth that hurts. I mean, we can develop this attitude. Okay, I'm supposed to tell the truth. Well, I'm going to tell you the truth that hurts, and I don't care if it hurts you. So here you go. What? Have it. But if you remember last week, one of the things that the Buddha said about speech is that it has to be truthful and kind and beneficial and timely. So when we're thinking about this, I'm going to tell you the truth, even if it hurts. We just need to kind of like, wait a minute. wait a minute, I want to practice right speech. So where are the other components? Okay, I have truthful down, perfect. So where is kind, beneficial, and timely? Where are those? And then we look for them. And then we figure out, how am I going to communicate this to this person in a way that is not hurtful, in a way that actually would provide some benefit, in a way that's going to make our connection endure, our positive and beneficial connection endure. And we can do it. We just need to sit down and work on it. We need to be a little bit more conscientious about our communication, not just like go off the cuff, but really be conscientious. We have to exert effort in the beginning, but if we train our mind and our speech in these ways, we will eventually be very skillful with our speech. Yeah, it's just that it takes training time. Okay. So one of the things that we can do is we can choose our time. Timely. There it is, timely. If we know we're gonna have a difficult conversation with somebody, we can just ask, what is a good time for you to have this conversation? What would be a good time and a good space for you to have this conversation? Because I'm going to tell you something that's going to be difficult for me to say and difficult for you to hear. And I don't want to break our connection. I don't want to have a difficult interaction. I want to make it beneficial for both of us. So what would be a good time for you? Would you like to have somebody else present while we're having this conversation for support? Or if you feel like you need some safety, yes, we can be kind enough to open those possibilities for ourselves and for the other person. And we set our motivation. We set our motivation before we engage in spiritual practice. So speech, we should take our speech as a spiritual practice. It is a spiritual practice. So if we're going to have some kind of communication with somebody, let's do our motivation. Yeah. We're going to a meeting at work, and we know there are going to be people in this meeting that we always end up having an issue with. So before the meeting, I'm going to set my motivation. Hey, I'm really going to try my darndest. I am not going to end up in some kind of a verbal tussle with these people as I usually do. Right? I'm going to send them loving kindness. I'm going to send them compassion. And I want every word to come out of my mouth to be truthful, kindly, beneficial, and timely. Yeah. And so we set our motivation from the get-go. And now our mind is prepared. Our mind is kind of focused in that direction because we already told our mind what direction we want to go in. So our mind is set. Very helpful. Yes, going to a meeting that we know is going to be difficult, an interaction we know is going to be difficult with the right motivation. Or if we didn't prepare ourselves and we're in the middle of a conversation and we know it's kind of sort of going the wrong way, we can immediately just take a moment to say, okay, may whatever words I'm going to say right now be truthful, timely, beneficial, and kind. May my words be helpful. May my attitude be helpful. May my tone be kind. And then we set our mind, okay? And just with that, our mind immediately turns in a different direction. Okay? So those are things that we can put in place to help to give ourselves and the other person the best chance for a good interaction, a good outcome. And then if things start to unravel in the middle of this interaction, we can just say, hey, why don't we just continue this at another time? I notice you're getting tired. I'm getting tired, a little prickly. Let's continue this at another time. And then, yeah, we have an opportunity to stop the interaction while we're still connecting in a positive way. We don't want to stop or leave an interaction when we are already at odds with each other. We want to try to do it while there's still a connection, a positive connection, even if it is tiny, so that we can come back and build on that. Build on that. And so there's a lot of, we all have heard this about, oh, we have to be assertive in our communication. We have to be assertive. We have to have, a win-win. You know what? Sometimes when we go into an interaction, we're like, I'm going to have a win-win. We can get a little antsy about that. That's a lot of pressure. Because I bet you, if we're not getting a win-win, we're going to get a bit testy. So we shouldn't really go in to an interaction with, I'm going to have a win-win. Why don't we just say, I want to connect positively with this person. I'm going to open my heart to this person. I'm going to be compassionate. Sometimes to be compassionate, I might have to lose. And I might have to be okay with me losing. But if we're stuck in there because we're going to want a win-win, that person is winning, I'm losing, and I want my win, that can create also a difficult interaction. But we're convinced, we're sold into this, we have to have a win-win. So that if I anticipate that person is winning and I'm seeing that I'm losing, I'm not getting out of here until I get my win too. That creates a very difficult dynamic. Whereas really all we want to do is, let me connect positively, kindly, and compassionately with this person. That is all I want. That's all I want. I want to hear this person. I really want to listen to this person. It's not so much as I want this person to listen to me, but my job is I want to listen to that person. And I want to listen not just what they're saying with their mouth, but I'm going to listen to all their other cues. I'm going to look at the nonverbal cues also to try to discern what's going on for this person. Okay. So a good conversation is when both people walk away with the feeling that, hey, I was heard. I was heard. And I was able to open my heart. And it was safe. I experienced safety in this communication. And I felt like I was heard. And that's beautiful. That's it. I heard that person. And I walked away with the feeling that that person heard me. Even they might just heard a little bit, but I felt like they heard that little bit. And that's enough. That's enough for now, for today. Yeah. And so, sometimes in our interactions, we need to be neither aggressive nor passive. And what happens, my friends, is that sometimes we get into being assertive, but we cross that line into being aggressive. Because we are not sure exactly where that line is. And we're thinking, okay, I'm gonna have to be assertive. But somewhere in there, we just stumbled into aggressive. And that other person is really receiving our interaction as aggressive. And they're shutting down. When somebody starts perceiving our interaction as aggressive, as pushy, they shut down. So they could either shut down or they can just come back with us with more aggression. Right? So instead, we want to be an active, not passive, not assertive, not aggressive. Yeah. We have to thread that middle way, that middle ground. Interacting, listening. Contributing, listening. Stepping forward a little bit, stepping back to allow that other person to come forward. Yeah. We can ask questions to try and understand better. That person may need a lot of empathy. The person may be saying some things that they want to make sure that we hear. And we got to say, you know what? I hear you. I hear your pain. I know you've been through a difficult situation. Boy, that's hard. I wouldn't know what I would do if I were in that situation, but you did the best you could. And we need to give that person a lot of reassurance. And before that person can hear us, we need to give them a lot of reassurance for them to feel like, okay, I'm being heard. And we have to be able to discern when that person needs that and when I need to be quiet so that I can receive and that person can feel heard. It says, there is this idea that communication is an art. It's an art and it's a lot of work. If we do it off the cuff, if we just handle it off the cuff, there is much more opportunity for things to go wrong. And so we don't interrupt. Okay, we are mindful. Okay, this person wants to be heard. I'm not going to interrupt. I'm going to let them talk. I'm not going to just say, okay, I have a fix for you. I know what you need to do. I know how to fix your problem. Because that also off-putting. It just completely shuts down. Okay, so now I'm way off, and we haven't yet come into our activity. So I'm gonna stop, and then we're gonna go into our activity. So I want to make sure that we have time for that. It's very important. So, thank you. Okay, I just read your message. Okay, so what we're gonna do is this. We're gonna do first a guided reflection. We're gonna do it for the next 10 minutes. So you're gonna just close your eyes. I'm gonna say a few things, and you're gonna just reflect, think about what I'm saying, and see what you come up with. That's gonna be the first 10 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next um, exercise. Okay. So first, what we're gonna do is you're gonna remember a difficult conversation. You're not going to be saying it or sharing it, but you're just going to be thinking about it, remembering a difficult conversation that you had recently. Or maybe a difficult conversation that was so hard, it happened long ago, but you still remember it. So just remember it. Think about what was said. Who said what? Think about how you reacted. What you said. What emotion came up. And where did you feel that emotion in your body, if you remember? Might have been one emotion, maybe several emotions. How did your body feel as those were arising in you, in your mind? And so, do you remember what was the trigger? Could have been one, it could have been several. What was it exactly that sort of launched you into this emotional response? Is this a habitual trigger for you? Is this something that happened, continues to happen? Was it something that you wanted to say that you couldn't say, that you didn't say? Or on the contrary, did you say something as a result that you wish you could take back? And so, holding that experience, that memory now in your mind, in your heart, breathe, breathe. And as you are breathing, yeah, send compassion to those who were involved, to yourself, the other person. Send them light, send them compassion. Visualize Buddhas around you. If you're remembering that, just visualize that at that moment, even though you couldn't see them at the time, at that moment there were Buddhas there, and they were with you, and there was light. And send yourself compassion and the other person compassion. And then see if you can release it. You can release it with that compassion, release it with that light. You can ask the Buddhas, I am releasing this. Please give me inspiration to release this painful memory. And give me the strength not to repeat that again. The wisdom. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit. You have a piece of paper and a pen or pencil handy. We're going to do a little writing. Yes. And so we're going to write down something that someone might say to us, or something someone did say to us, yeah, that was challenging for us to hear. A challenging statement. That someone did say or could say to you that would trigger a response. And so as you're thinking about that, try to come up with responses that would be honest but kind. Yeah. So instead of having an explosion because someone said something that was a challenging statement for you, that caused a reaction, that triggered you somehow. And instead of exploding and saying some things you're going to regret, we're going to try to identify what kind of response to that would be honest but kind, wise, gentle. Something that would support the connection with the other person, not sever it. And try to observe yourself as you're writing, as you're identifying these things, and see if that emotion is even just arising now as you're just even thinking about it. And try to identify, okay, is what I'm writing being influenced by the emotion, or is being influenced by wisdom and compassion? So focus on identifying responses that are permeated by wisdom and compassion, and not so much by any trace of emotional, a triggered emotional response. when we finish the exercise, Morgan, I'll come back to you. And then finally, yeah, write about some ideas you have on how to find this middle ground between, you know, being not being passive and being pushy or aggressive. Yeah, how do you find that middle ground between those two extremes of aggressiveness or passivity? What ideas do you have to keep yourself, in that middle ground? Okay. So you can continue with that. If you didn't finish it, you can continue this tonight, tomorrow. This is an exercise that you can continue to do with different kinds of triggers, different kinds of situations, just so that you can start to get a handle analyzing the situation and getting some ideas and how to respond in a different way. So I saw Morgan had a hand up. I don't know if Morgan has a question. Oh, okay. Okay, so if there are no further questions or comments, then I'm going to mention what's the homework for next time. So during this week, yeah, what we're going to try to work on is we're going to identify that space between the trigger and the response. We're going to try to identify it and try to just do some breathing. Once you feel triggered, try to hold on to that response, close your mouth and breathe. Close your mouth so you don't say anything, and then just breathe. Take some deep breaths. However many it's going to take for you to really get that emotion under control. Yeah, so we're going to try to do that. Keep observing that space and keep on trying to expand that space so that you can delay the response as much as possible. Use your breathing as an initial tool to do that. Okay. Okay. So we finished 1 minute early. Didn't think I was gonna do that after, sort of watching my first part of the talk. I just totally the time went away, but I think we managed to wrap it up with all of the important points in there. So I hope you can practice this week, and I will see you on next Sunday. Thank you. Thank you for being here.